Hey guys, Ben Farmstead here. I wanted to do a quick update with you about how I make my beehives. I make them out of pine. It's usually a 12-foot board. I find that's the most economical, and it's kind of a learning process for me, but they've been working out really well. And I have both the regular deep boxes, which is the nucleus, and I also have where I can make the supers, and you can see that the frames fit in them nicely. These are I get these from Rossman, GeorgiaBees.com, Rossman Apiaries over in Moultrie, Georgia. I don't make the frames yet, but I will be figuring out how to do that shortly, so I can save on that and just buy the foundation or make the foundation. So what I do, and this works for the tops and the bottoms because I use queen excluders, and a queen excluder is very simple. It's a wire grate or grill that fits on the beehive, and this actually fits right to the corners. And what it does is the little holes in here are too close together for the queen to crawl through. So when you put the super, like in this case, if you put this super on top of this nucleus, which is a much deeper hive, you put the queen separator in here, the excluder, in between the two, and that would keep the queen from going up into where the bees are going to put the honey. So when you come in to rob the hive to get the honey, you won't have any little baby bees in your honey. So you don't have to worry about it. It's just going to be honey and maybe some bee pollen or something like that, but most of the time it's just all honey. And you just take a couple of frames out, you can put a couple of empty frames in, consolidate it, take some honey off, and you can just keep doing that along and along, and you'll get a bunch of honey off of it. Now what I do is I use two sizes of boards. This one is a 1x8, so this is supposed to be 8 inches. It's not. It's supposed to be an inch thick. It's only 3/4. So, and I use 1x10. That's 12 feet long. So, and if you look, it's only really like 9 1/4. So, and these are, I get these at Lowe's or Home Depot or whoever has the best price on them. And at 12 feet long, you can make 2 of each type of box out of one board. So what you do is you cut your side panels at 16 1/4 inches in length, and these are going to be your long sides. And the other part of the construction process is, well, actually, I'm sorry, these are going to be your short sides, the ends. These are going to be cut. And you take the longer boards, they're 19 inches. Let me make sure I can do this with one hand. I think that's the best side to go down. And we're going to take just this top one here. These are 19 inches. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna have to do some cutting on it with, I use a chop saw. Yeah, I get a good old Harbor Freight tool store chop saw. Harbor Freight Tools. It's been a good saw. I can't complain about it. It's cut up everything I've needed it to cut up, which is just mostly lumber. And let's see here. So what you do is you're going to set the long boards on the inside of the 16 1/4 inch boards. So these are 19 long and 16 1/4 wide. And what you do with your 16 1/4s is you lay out, you come in and you're going to cut the width of this 3/4 inch board off the inside. So I just scribe a line all the way down. I do that on both sides and on the top, all the way across the top. I just use one of these side boards to set it up across the top, and then I just scribe my line. Okay. And then I take the table saw and I cut this line out, and then I make a bunch of little cuts across with the table saw until this is essentially just cut off. I could probably use the router, but I can do it really quick on the table saw. And you do the same on this side, the top, and this side. You're going to leave this bottom section alone. And you do this for 2 boards per hive. Well, this per super, I should say. And what you're doing, and I'll show you on this one because it's already made, is your frames, they have a tab on them where they sit down in the hive. And that's to leave an escape space for the bees so you don't squish them when you put the frames back in. And you want this to, I'll just pull this out and show you. You want this to, yes, I messed boo-boo. You want this to have a shelf for these to sit in. And that keeps you from squishing your bees. And they hang loose when you put them in. So it's got a little bit of wiggle room, so you can get your hive tool in there and you can pry them out or prise them loose, or you can keep them just a little bit separated. If you have to put your terazosin and powdered sugar antibiotic to treat with for medicating them, you can put it right along here. Now this is cut, this is a 3/4 inch board, so we had to cut it and we set the saw so that the saw only went halfway in it. So all the way around. And you can do that on your table saw using, I use this. So this is my used to be a tri-square. Used to have all the little stuff all over it. Had the little hip rafter thing and the little triangle part and all that. I don't know where it is. It's gone. This is what I have. It's got a bubble level in it. So I use this as a depth gauge to set the saw blade height, so that when I'm going to cut this board, let's see, I have a really good example somewhere. Ah, here it is. have a really good example. So what happens is, when you set this, you're putting it on 3/4 wide to 3/8 of an inch, and when you put the square up against it and you scribe your line, you're going to be too far in. So if you come back with the square and run it on the other side and scribe the line, you're going to be too far in on this side. But it shows you that there's an empty space, and that's essentially where the saw blade is going to rip down. I didn't draw it all the way down, but the important thing is, if you set it to the 3/8, when you cut it, it's going to work out really nicely with across here. You're going to cut it, and this you're going to cut 3/8 because it's going to half. And what that does, when you cut it on the saw like that, it makes a nice corner joint where your board on the side butts up and into this front board, and then your shelf is here for your frames to sit on. And then I just come in from the front and I shoot a couple of little brads. They're like 18 gauge brad nails, and then I put some exterior deck screws in the corners. Now, when you make the big one, the big nucleus on the bottom, you will have the frames, if you're using the deep frames, come all the way to the bottom, and they'll stick out past the bottom of the frame. And you can see this as an example how much bigger these are, how much taller they are compared to the shallow super frames. So this is what the bees live on. They make wax. This is coated with wax and honey, and the bees will make wax, and they'll draw this out into the little hexagon shapes, and it'll be probably about 3/4 of an inch, half an inch deep all over, and that's what they'll live in. Those are their little cells. Now, commercial hives, when you buy them, and they're like $180 for a cheap hive, what you get is, it comes with a stand that this sits on. It's basically a piece of 2x4 with a 3/4 inch cut, and it has 1x4 stuffed in between it, sandwiched together, and they call that the hive bottom. And that hive bottom sits on a hive stand, which is just some 1x4s that come out in a rectangle, and it has a flat base on it that's called a landing board. So the bees land and they crawl up the board, and then they get on the bottom of the hive board and they crawl in the entrance, and then they crawl up. Well, this is a piece of the same offcut 1x material, which is really only 3/4 of an inch. So if you want to save a ton of money, all you have to do is cut some 1x4 material. It doesn't have to be 8-inch wide or 10-inch wide. It can be 4 inches wide. You can use the 1x4s by however long you want. And all you do is you come along here and you rip out the width of this board. You just mark it out. Real simple. You scribe your line, and you're going to wind up with a line just like this, and you cut that off. Then get you an old piece of plywood, not treated, but just regular plywood. I got quite a bit of this stuff laying around, so I'm going to use what I got, because I'm all about making the best I can out of what I got. and you just brad nail and glue and brad nail this stuff, this 3/4 inch spacer, in a horseshoe shape around the bottom of your nucleus. And that will give you all the space you need to have, number one, your nucleus tall enough for the bees to come in and out of. And you can make your entrance reducers out of a piece of 1x4. So it's easy to source the stuff. It's easy to cut them. Put it in here. And what you have is at the bottom here, you have plenty of space for the bees to come in and climb right up onto the frames. So your plywood bottom, since the beehive will sit on either blocks or a stand made out of 2x6s to get it up off of the ground, I usually use CVS blocks, the big house blocks, construction blocks, things like that. Just pretty much anything you can use to get the thing off the ground and have a slight bevel so that the front of the hive is angled down and the back of the hive is angled up. And you face your hives towards the east. The entrance always goes towards the east. And then you can make the top out of a simple piece of plywood and paint your beehives. Paint them bright, happy colors, blues, and all kinds of different, just, you can paint them white, you can paint them blue, you can paint them whatever color you want to. But the bees can differentiate between the color patterns. So not only does it help protect the beehive, it helps the bees remember which way they're supposed to go home. And I don't, or I should say I have not been putting, a lot of people put handles, that's what they call them, on the front, which is essentially just like, some people take routers and they'll cut a little scallop in here so you can grab it, put your hand in it, or some people just simply staple a board on the front of it, or they put it in with wood screws or something. I don't. You can if you want to. I'm not particularly fond of having to move them around a lot. So if I catch a swarm of bees, I'll put them in a beehive, and that's pretty much where they're going to stay. So, and then I'm usually leave it close to where the swarm is, and they're just kind of dotted around my property, because it's, there's like 20 acres of property here, so there's more than enough room for 2 or 3 or 4 hives of bees. So that's it in a nutshell. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and please like and subscribe and hit the bell for new updates, and y'all have a good one.